My husband and I have been together for 7 years, and for the most part, I thought our relationship was everything I could have asked for. Sure, like any couple, we've had our ups and downs, but overall, we were a team. We got married in April 2021. Both of us cried at the wedding because it felt so surreal, like something out of a dream. Since then, things had been smooth. Sure, life had its little bumps, but we were handling them together, or so I thought. Yesterday, we came back from lunch with our newly engaged friends, Kai and Marie. It was a nice outing, but nothing extraordinary, just another Sunday. We grabbed some pasta from our favourite place on the way back home, and I was happily shoveling it into my mouth because, honestly, it was way too cold for ice cream. We live in a tiny apartment, and everything always feels a bit cramped, but it's home. After we got back, my husband hopped into the shower while I put the leftovers in the fridge and tidied up a bit. When I finished my shower, I grabbed some lotion and put it on my palms. I accidentally squeezed out a bit too much, so I just rubbed the excess on my face, as you do, but, of course, my goofy side couldn't resist. I still had some leftover lotion on my finger, so I drew a little smiley face and some spiky hair on my thumb. Lotion man. I called it. It was ridiculous, but I was in a silly mood. I came out of the bathroom, giggling, and showed it to my husband. Hey, look, it's Lotion Man, I said, still laughing. I thought he'd find it as funny as I did, but he didn't even crack a smile. He just stared at my hand for a moment, blinked, and didn't say anything. At that point, I started to do a silly voice, making Lotion Man speak in a goofy tone, throwing out random phrases, mixing in some inside jokes, just having fun with it. I went on for about a minute, but then, without warning, my husband stood up, grabbed a few things, and walked toward the door. Where are you going? I asked, kind of playfully, because we had just gotten home, and I didn't think he'd be leaving again so soon. He didn't say anything, just grabbed his stuff, walked out, and got into his truck. At first, I didn't really think anything of it. We had just returned from a trip, so he had all his things with him, and he's the kind of guy who likes to spend time alone sometimes. Still, something felt off. It wasn't until he actually drove away that I realized he was really leaving, and I felt like a total idiot for not noticing it sooner. I was texting him, but all he said was that he was thinking about things and that he was going to stay at his brother Tyler's place. That's it. I tried texting him more, but he wasn't responding, not even reading my messages. He always sleeps early, so I didn't expect to hear from him until the morning. I stared at the door for about 10 minutes, feeling completely lost. I had no idea what had just happened. I kept replaying the Lotion Man thing in my mind, wondering if maybe I'd gone too far, made too silly of a joke. Was it really that big of a mistake? It seemed so small, yet the way he left, without saying anything, felt like more than just a reaction to a silly moment. Maybe it triggered something else. I've been with him for years, and we've never had a fight like this in the past, during rough patches. We'd have disagreements or take breaks from intimacy, but it was always temporary. We always found our way back to each other. But now, he was just gone. I know I'm not perfect. And I'm always cracking jokes, maybe too many sometimes, but this felt different. I felt hurt, confused, and, honestly, kind of embarrassed. It was hard to believe that one small joke could cause all this. My mind was racing, and I couldn't even focus. I thought about calling his brother, Tyler, to see if he knew what was going on, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. Instead, I just kept texting, waiting for a response that never came. I know I probably shouldn't have pushed him to respond, but I couldn't help it. I just needed to understand why he left. Was it really just because of something silly I did? Or was there something else going on? Why hadn't he told me he was upset before just walking out? I kept replaying the conversation in my head, and the way he looked at me when I showed him Lotion Man. Why didn't he laugh? Why didn't he even acknowledge it? That night, I lay in bed, staring at my phone, hoping for some kind of answer. But there was nothing, just silence. The silence stretched on longer than I could stand. I kept thinking that maybe he just needed space, but the more I thought about it, the more it didn't make sense. Sure, we'd had our share of misunderstandings in the past, but never like this. He had left, just like that. No warning, no explanation, and I was sitting there, texting him endlessly, hoping for a response that never came. It wasn't until the next day, in the late afternoon, that my husband finally came home. He walked in, his face looking different, like he'd been through something. I had been sitting at the kitchen table, still in a daze, waiting for something, anything. He stood there in the doorway for a second, and I swear, it felt like a lifetime before he said anything. He looked at me, and then he finally spoke. "I'm ready to talk," he said, his voice quiet, but heavy with emotion. I was so relieved that he was back, but I couldn't help feeling a mix of emotions. I didn't know what I wanted to hear. I wasn't sure what was going on with him. He had seemed distant, almost cold when he left, and now he was back, and I didn't know where to begin. I tried not to be too clingy or desperate, though, even though I missed him so much. I needed answers, but I also wanted to give him the space he seemed to need. So, I just nodded and waited for him to start. He told me the same story he had mentioned earlier, but this time, it made more sense. Apparently, during our lunch with Kai and Marie, something had happened that I hadn't noticed. He and Marie had spent some time alone while I was talking to Kai. At first, I thought nothing of it, but then, my husband said something that completely threw me off. Marie had told him something that made his entire world shift. She told him that when Kai proposed, she realized that she was still in love with him. He didn't know how to react to that at first, but when she told him that, it sent his thoughts into a spiral. My husband had known Marie for years, since college. In fact, and they were all close friends, but the fact that she admitted that she was still in love with him, that hit him hard. He explained that Marie had tried to suppress her feelings. Even though she had accepted Kai's proposal, she said she was trying to move on and put those feelings behind her. But apparently, it didn't work. Instead, Marie asked my husband to run away with her. She told him she wanted him to leave me and be with her. My blood ran cold. I could feel the anger rising in me as he spoke, and my heart started racing. How could she do that? How could she betray me like that? After everything we'd been through, my husband said that he had gently turned her down, of course. He told her he couldn't do that to me, that he was committed to our marriage. But the fact that she had put that idea in his head, that was a lot to process. Then, everything seemed to come crashing down all at once. My husband said that he had been thinking about it all day, and when I showed him the lotion man thing, it triggered something in him. He said it made him feel like I was immature, like I wasn't taking things seriously, and that's when he felt the sudden cold feet. I sat there, stunned, as he explained everything. I could barely process what he was saying. So, he left because of my silly joke. I had been a little goofy, but this seemed like it was about more than just a smiley face made of lotion. It was clear that Marie's words had gotten under his skin in a way I hadn't realized. I asked him, "You're telling me that this is about her?" I couldn't believe it. This wasn't just about me being silly, it was about something else. Something much deeper that I hadn't even seen coming. My husband tried to explain that he wasn't considering leaving me for Marie, that he still loved me. And he was just confused. He said he had been thinking about things, about the future, about us. But in that moment, it didn't feel like that at all. It felt like he had been swayed by someone else's feelings, someone who was clearly still emotionally attached to him. I couldn't look at him the same way. The anger started to bubble up inside me, but I kept it in. I was still in shock. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to scream, to demand answers, but another part of me wanted to shut down completely and just walk away from it all. "I need some time to think," I said quietly, trying to hold back the tears that were threatening to spill over. "I don't know what to make of all this." He nodded, his face full of regret. I could see he was sorry. But I wasn't sure if that was enough anymore. After everything he had said about Marie, about his feelings, about his sudden cold feet, I wasn't sure where we stood anymore. I asked him to sleep on the couch that night. I needed space. I needed to process everything he had just told me. I didn't want to deal with him in our bed when my heart felt like it was shattering. He agreed, and I watched him go to the couch. It didn't make anything better, though. I lay there in bed, staring at the ceiling, feeling completely lost. Could I forgive him? Could I ever look at him the same way again? I didn't know. All I knew was that everything had changed in the span of one afternoon, and I was left reeling from the consequences. The next few days felt like they were dragging on forever. My husband and I barely spoke, and every time I looked at him, The knot in my stomach tightened. The weight of what he had told me, the part about Marie, and his sudden cold feet hung heavy in the air, suffocating any space for normalcy. I wanted answers, but I wasn't sure how to even begin the conversation again. Eventually, I couldn't stand it anymore. I had to know more about what had been going on in his mind. So, after a few days of silence, I decided I had to talk to someone. I wasn't going to get any peace of mind without the whole truth, and I figured the best way to get it was to confront Marie directly. I called Kai, my longtime friend, and asked if he'd be open to meeting up. I was hoping he could shed some light on the situation. Maybe he knew something I didn't. He agreed, and we met up at a coffee shop the next day. I was a bundle of nerves, but I needed to get it out. I told him everything I knew so far, including the whole Lotion Man incident and the fact that my husband had left and gone to his brother's place. Kai listened patiently, nodding as I spoke, but I could tell he was holding something back. When I finished explaining everything, Kai hesitated before speaking. Look, I know this is hard for you, but you need to know something. His voice was serious now, and I could tell this wasn't going to be easy to hear. Marie didn't tell me what she said to your husband, but I'm not surprised she did. I mean, we've been friends for a long time, but even I've seen how complicated things are with her. My heart sank. What do you mean by complicated? I asked, the words barely escaping my lips. Kai looked around the cafe, making sure no one was paying attention, and leaned in closer. Marie has been in love with your husband for a while, even before she got engaged to me. She's always had feelings for him, and I don't think she's ever fully gotten over it. I felt the air leave my lungs. So, this whole thing with my husband, it wasn't just a one-time thing. He really meant that much to her. Kai sighed and nodded. Yeah, it's been going on for a while. She's the kind of person who likes to keep her emotions hidden, but it's pretty clear to me now that she was never truly over him. She's been trying to move on, but deep down, she's still attached. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It felt like everything was falling apart. My mind was racing as I tried to process what he was saying. So, what? Is he in love with her? Is that why he left? Kai shook his head. I don't think he's in love with her. At least not in the way she is with him. But she's definitely confused him, made him doubt things. And your husband, he's a good guy. But he's also a bit of a sucker when it comes to that stuff. He doesn't handle situations like that very well. I felt like I was going to explode. It wasn't just Marie, it was my husband too. He had let her get into his head. He had allowed her to make him question our relationship. The betrayal I was feeling wasn't just about Marie, it was about him too. I trusted him completely. And he had let me down in ways I never expected. Why didn't you tell me any of this earlier? I asked, my voice shaking with frustration. Kai looked guilty. I didn't know how to bring it up. I thought you were handling things well enough, and I didn't want to get involved more than I already was. But I can see now that it's a bigger deal than I thought. I'm really sorry. I nodded, feeling the weight of everything settle in. I felt like I was being suffocated by the lies, the half-truths, and the confusion. But I couldn't let this go. I needed closure, and I needed to figure out what to do next. That night, after I got home, I sat down with my husband. He was on the couch, watching TV like nothing had happened. The same man who had walked out on me just days ago now looked like a stranger. It was almost like he was pretending everything was fine, as if I hadn't just been through hell. I talked to Kai, I said, my voice cold and controlled. He paused the TV and looked at me, his face full of concern. He could probably sense something was off, but he didn't know the half of it. Why did you talk to him? He asked, his voice defensive. I needed to understand why you left, I replied, my heart pounding. Why did you leave me? And why is Marie involved in all of this? What exactly happened between you two? My husband's face hardened. Look, I told you before, I don't want to hurt you. I didn't want to involve Marie in any of this. But she's been on my mind, and I wasn't sure what to do. I felt my chest tighten. So, you were thinking about leaving me, weren't you? You let her get in your head. You let her make you doubt everything we've built. How could you? He lowered his head, looking defeated. I never meant for it to go this far. But I was confused. I didn't know how to handle my feelings for her, and I didn't know how to talk to you about it. I stared at him in disbelief. So, you thought it was easier to leave than to talk to me, to let me in on what was going on in your head? He didn't respond. Instead, he just sat there, staring down at his hands. I could feel my anger building, but I didn't want to scream at him. I didn't want to give him the satisfaction of knowing how much he had hurt me. I don't know where we go from here, I said quietly, trying to keep my emotions in check. But I need space. I need time to think about everything. I don't know if I can just forgive this. He nodded, his eyes welling with tears. I understand. I'm sorry. I never meant to hurt you. I could feel the coldness creeping into my bones. I had never seen him like this, broken, confused, apologetic. But the damage had already been done. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know if I could ever look at him the same way again. Part of me wanted to forgive him, to move on and pretend like this didn't happen. But the other part of me felt like I had lost something that could never be fixed. I walked away that night, leaving him alone on the couch. I had no idea what the future held, but I knew that nothing would ever be the same again. The days after that conversation felt like I was walking through a fog. Every interaction with my husband felt like it was a chore. I couldn't look at him without feeling this deep, gnawing ache in my chest. The trust I had so easily given him had been shattered, and I wasn't sure if it could ever be repaired. I spent the next few days trying to wrap my head around everything. I had the emotional roller coaster of trying to decide if I should forgive him, or if I should just walk away. I kept asking myself, what did I deserve? And all I could come up with was that I deserved someone who would never make me feel like this. Someone who would never put another person before me, especially not in the way my husband had. But there was something else eating at me. The guilt I felt was almost unbearable, not for the way my husband had treated me, but for the part I played in all of this. My stupid, silly joke lotion man. I couldn't help but replay that moment over and over in my mind. If I hadn't made that joke, would he have stayed? Would he have walked out the door? Could I have prevented this? I wasn't naive enough to think that the joke alone was what caused him to leave. But in my heart, I couldn't shake the feeling that it had been the tipping point. It was a ridiculous thing to fixate on, but it felt like my immaturity had pushed him to a place where he felt like he couldn't stay. And that made me feel even more lost. I also realized, during those sleepless nights, that it wasn't just Marie who was involved in all this, it was me too. It was my husband who let her sway his thoughts. But I had to acknowledge that he had never been a passive participant. He had made the decision to walk away. I hadn't forced him to leave, and I wasn't responsible for his actions. But it sure felt like it. I couldn't keep running in circles in my head. I needed some kind of resolution, something to help me see where I stood, even if it meant pushing my feelings to the side for a moment. So, I decided I needed to talk to Marie. I reached out to her the next day. She picked up after the second ring, and for a split second, I thought about hanging up. What was I going to say to her? How was I supposed to look her in the eyes after everything that had happened? But then, she answered, and I just blurted it out. I know everything, I said, my voice surprisingly steady, about you and my husband. There was silence on the other end of the line. For a moment, I thought she had hung up, but then, I heard her take a deep breath. I don't know what to say, she finally replied, sounding almost defeated. I didn't want this to happen. I never meant to hurt you. I felt this rush of emotions flood over me. You didn't mean to hurt me. I almost laughed, but the sound came out shaky. You asked my husband to leave me. You practically begged him to run away with you. How is that not hurting me? I know I messed up, she said, her voice quivering. But I wasn't in a good place. I've had feelings for him for a long time. I tried to hide them, but when I saw him again, everything came flooding back. It wasn't supposed to be like this. Her words felt hollow, like she was trying to justify her actions, and I couldn't help but feel the anger bubbling inside me. But I kept myself calm. I didn't want to scream at her. I didn't want to give her the satisfaction of seeing me crumble. I want you to know something, I said, my voice cold. This is not just on you. My husband is just as much at fault here as you are. He was the one who walked out. He was the one who let you get to him. And now, I'm the one left picking up the pieces. I never meant for it to go this far, she whispered, her voice thick with guilt. I honestly thought I could handle it, but I couldn't. I'm so sorry. The apology didn't feel real. It didn't make me feel better. It didn't change anything. But I nodded to myself, as if it would somehow make things easier. Just stay away from my family, I said quietly. And if you care about Kai, you'll stay away from him too. Let him find someone who isn't going to hurt him like this. After I hung up, I felt both relieved and empty. The conversation didn't solve anything. Marie's apology didn't heal the wound that was festering inside me. It didn't fix what had been broken between my husband and me. But it was a step. It was a little piece of closure that I had needed, even if it didn't feel complete. The next day, I saw Kai at the gym. I wasn't sure how to act around him anymore. Our entire dynamic had shifted after everything that had happened. But I knew I needed to talk to him. He was my friend, and he deserved to know what had been going on behind his back. I waited until he finished his set before I walked up to him. He looked at me, his eyes tired, like he hadn't been sleeping well. He probably hadn't been. I hadn't either. Hey, I said, my voice a little softer than I expected. Can we talk? Kai nodded and wiped the sweat off his forehead. Yeah, of course. Let's go grab a coffee or something. We sat down at a nearby cafe, and I started telling him everything. I told him about the conversation I'd had with Marie, how she admitted she'd tried to pull my husband away from me. I told him that she had confessed to having feelings for him for a long time, and how I didn't want him to get hurt in all of this. I didn't know, Kai said quietly, shaking his head. She never told me any of this. I looked at him, trying to gauge his reaction. She never told you that she had feelings for him. That's not all she hasn't told you. Kai. His face went pale, and I could see his jaw tighten. What else do I not know? I took a deep breath and spilled it all. I told him about the affair Marie had been having with my husband, the things that had been going on behind his back. I didn't want to say it, but I felt like he had the right to know. He deserved the truth. When I finished, there was a long silence. Kai didn't say anything at first. He just stared at the table, running his fingers through his hair, looking like the world had just fallen out from under him. I didn't know any of this, he muttered, his voice breaking. How could she do that to me? How could she do that to us? I didn't know what to say. I just sat there, feeling the weight of everything crashing down on both of us. In some ways, I felt bad for him, but in others, I was angry. Angry that he had been lied to, that he had been dragged into something so toxic without even knowing it. But the truth was out now, and even though it didn't make anything easier, at least I wasn't carrying this burden alone anymore. After everything that had happened, the conversations with my husband, Marie's apology, and the heartbreaking discussions with Kai, I felt like I was standing on the edge of something I couldn't quite define. My life had been flipped upside down in the span of just a few weeks. The world I knew, the one I had built with my husband, had shattered, and I was left trying to pick up the pieces. But as hard as it was, there was a part of me that felt a strange sense of freedom. For the first time in a long time, I could breathe. The weight of the past few days, the lies, the betrayal was still with me, but it was no longer suffocating me. The truth had come out, and now I had to figure out what to do with it. I spent the next week trying to process everything. I wasn't in a rush to make any decisions, but I knew I couldn't stay in this limbo forever. I needed to make a choice about my future, about whether I was going to continue living in the shadow of my husband's infidelity, or if I was going to take control and build something new for myself. Kai and I were still in regular contact, and we were both healing in our own ways. We spent a lot of time talking about what had happened, and, surprisingly, it helped. I felt like I could talk to him about anything, and I knew he understood the pain I was going through because he was dealing with it too. Our bond had shifted, and though I wasn't sure where it would lead, I was grateful for his support. I also took some time to focus on myself. I knew I couldn't keep living in the past, so I started to prioritize my well-being. I got back into the gym, something I had neglected for far too long, and began taking care of myself in ways that I had forgotten. It felt good to do something just for me, to reclaim a little bit of my power. But even as I worked on myself, there was still the question of what to do about my marriage. My husband had come back, and he had apologized profusely. He had expressed regret for everything, for hurting me, for letting Marie get in his head. And I wanted to believe him. I really did, but the damage was done. One night, a few weeks after the dust had settled, my husband came to visit. He showed up at my door, his face drawn and tired. Like he hadn't been sleeping well, he asked if we could talk. My heart was torn. Part of me wanted to open the door and let him in, to try and salvage whatever was left of our marriage. But another part of me was so incredibly angry that I couldn't even look at him without feeling this overwhelming sense of betrayal. I know things haven't been easy, he said quietly, but I want to make this right. I'm sorry for everything, for hurting you, for making you feel like you were never enough. You are enough. You always have been. His words hit me harder than I expected. I had missed him desperately, but I couldn't shake the thought of everything that had happened. The affair, the lies, the way he had walked out on me like it was nothing. I wasn't sure if I could ever trust him again. You can't just come back and expect things to be fine, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. You can't erase what you did. You can't erase the way you made me feel. I know, he said, his voice breaking, but I'm willing to do whatever it takes to show you that I love you. I don't want to lose you. I looked at him, at the man I had once called my partner, and I felt this incredible sadness wash over me. I loved him. I always had. But love wasn't enough to fix this. Love didn't make the hurt go away. Love didn't erase the scars that had been left behind. I need time, I said, my voice barely a whisper. I need time to think about everything. I need to figure out if this is something I can move past. He nodded, his face full of sorrow. I understand. And if you need space, I'll give it to you. But just know that I'm here, and I'm sorry. I'll always be sorry. As he walked away that night, I felt this sense of finality settle in. I didn't know if I was ready to forgive him. I didn't know if I could. But I knew I had to find my own path, whether that meant staying with him or moving on. The following days were a blur. I continued to focus on my own healing, spending time with friends, going to therapy, and slowly letting go of the anger that had consumed me for so long. I was taking back control of my life, piece by piece. One thing became clear to me: I deserved better. I deserved someone who would never make me feel like I wasn't enough. I deserved someone who would never betray me, who would never put me in a position where I had to question their loyalty. And whether that person was my husband or someone else, I would have to make that decision for myself. A few months later, I finally made the decision to file for divorce. It wasn't an easy choice, and it hurt more than I can even describe. But I knew it was the right one. I couldn't keep living in a relationship where trust had been broken beyond repair. I needed to move forward, even if it meant leaving behind everything I had known. The divorce process wasn't easy. It was filled with paperwork, emotional conversations, and difficult decisions. But with every step, I felt a little more free. I knew that I was doing what was best for me, even though it didn't feel like it at the time. And then there was Chase. I met him shortly after everything had settled. He was kind, patient, and he made me feel like I was truly seen. We had the kind of connection I had always wanted, but never knew existed. He didn't just put up with my jokes, he embraced them. He loved my energy, my silliness, my quirks. And in return, I found myself falling for him more each day. Chase was everything I hadn't known I needed. He was stable, loving, and he made me feel truly appreciated. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was in a relationship where I didn't have to second guess everything. The more I thought about it, the more I realized how much I had grown. I had been through so much, and I had come out stronger on the other side. The pain of my past would always be a part of me, but it didn't define me anymore. I had learned to let go of what didn't serve me, and I had found a new chapter of my life, one that was filled with love, laughter, and, most importantly, peace. So, here I am now, living a life that feels true to who I am. I've learned that you can't let the past control your future. No matter what happens, you have to keep moving forward. And as for Lotion Man, he's still with me. He's a symbol of everything I've been through and the person I've become. My goofy little creation still makes me smile. And maybe that's all I really need right now.